Lakota spirituality and Christianity are not the same thing. You cannot combine the two. And some people think that you can. No, you can't. It's like oil and water. Because in the ancient Lakota way, there is no God. There is no heaven. Yeah, that doesn't exist. It's something completely different. Those are Christian concepts. But like I said, in this Christianization process that happened on the reservation, they, used Christian concepts, and they tried to make Lakota belief fit into it. That's like trying to put a square into a circle. It doesn't work. Yeah, it will not fit perfect. You can't. Yeah. So Wakantanka is not God. Okay? Wakantanka is an organization, and there's more than one. And it's not which one is better. No, they're just different. They work differently. Yeah? One Wakantanka has to do with the earth, wind, and fire. The other Wakantanka has to do with water. And then there's other Wakantanka as well. And this is not a one God concept. Yeah? The soul journey is not the same thing that the Bible teaches. It's something completely different. So Wakantanka does not mean God. There is no one God concept in ancient Lakota way. There's a bunch of organizations. That's the ancient way. The Christian way is they tried to change it, to change things. And another thing that they tried to change was this expression, Ushimala. They changed that to mean, have pity on me, because I'm a worthless sinner. I'm born in sin. So have pity on me. See, that's coming from the Catholics. That's not the correct definition. Unshila is to have compassion for others. Have compassion. Yeah? To have compassion. Waunshila. It's compassion. How does Unshila, which means to have compassion, turn to have pity on me? See, it changed. That's not the correct definition. Unshimala means have compassion for me. It means help me. I need a special help. Help me. It doesn't mean pity me. It means help me in a special way. Yeah, omakia is another way to say help me, but that's a generalized kind of help me. Yeah, but when you ask a special favor, you say unshimala. That means help me. Now this is a really beautiful concept, because in Lakota, whatever you do and say, and how you say and do something, this is sending an energy out. So if you're bitching around and talking bad about people, telling lies, this is an unhealthy energy that's going out from you, and it's going to come back 4 times stronger to you. So you're the one who's going to end up hurt more. And that energy may not even bother the other person. You're just messing yourself up more. Yeah, but that works the same way when the energy is good, when it's healthy. So when you help people, when you congratulate somebody and say, good job, you really did good. Hey, how are you doing, man? It's good to see you. See, when you talk like this, you're sending out a healthy energy. You're sending out good medicine. And that's going to return to you 4 times as strong and bless you. So when you help somebody, They get their help, plus you're going to receive blessing somewhere, somehow. That energy is coming back to you 4 times as strong that you sent it. Okay? So, when somebody says to you, Ushimala, you say, how can I help you? Then when they tell you what they need and you help them, it's a win-win situation, because number 1, they get their help. But number 2, you're going to be blessed 4-fold because of this natural law of generosity. So when somebody says Ushimala to you, they're giving you an opportunity to receive blessing. Now this has to be healthy, okay? So when somebody says, Ushimala, could you buy me a case of beer? See, that's an abuse, and it's not going to work. Yeah? So the only way you can make it work is say no. Then you send that's a healthy response, and then you still get blessed. Yeah, you still receive your blessing, but that person doesn't get their beer because that's a bad thing. Yeah. See, you can when somebody sends an unhealthy request, you can still break it and still receive blessing. That's natural law of generosity. That's why sometimes you have to. Generosity means you have knowing when to say no. Yeah. Again, generosity means knowing when to say no. If you say yes to everything and you help everybody every time, that's not generosity. That's codependency. That's unhealthy. In which you're becoming an enabler. And that's not healthy. That is not generosity. True generosity means that you have to know when to say no. The original definition is really beautiful. And the Catholics changed it to something just demeaning, where you belittle yourself. So, if you ask anybody on the reservation today, 99% of the time they're going to tell you it means have pity on me. And that shows you how effective the Christian brainwashing was. Because there's just 1% of the people that know the true definition. And this show is trying to increase that 1%, yeah, as much as possible. That's why I talk about these things. Yeah. So Oshimala is a beautiful thing. It means help me. I have a special need. Help me. You don't say this when you are asking for something selfish. It has to be something you really need. You know, like say your car's broke down and you have to get someplace. You know, you can use it in that way. And now I'm gonna tell this story that happened long time ago. This was really oldie. We're talking ancient. Okay, we are talking ancient here. This is kept through Dakota oral tradition. This comes from the Dakota people. And let me explain this real quick. What's the difference between Lakota and Dakota? Where we have L sounds, the Dakota replace that with a D. So, Lakota, Dakota. See that? Isn't that cool? That's the only difference. So, if I say Lila washte, they say Dida washte. If I say Pilama yellow, which means thank you, they say Pidama yedo. You hear the difference? The first one, Lila washte, that means really good. Okay? So, one more example. If I say I love you, then she will say I dove you too. Shoot. Okay, bad joke. All right, never mind. That's why I never could snag Dakota girls. Yeah, they didn't like that joke. I used to know this Dakota girl, and I fell in love with her, and I kept saying, I love you, I love you, and she looked at me just strange, and she shake her head and turn around, and walk away. So I was like, gee, what the heck is wrong with her? And I saw her at another powwow, and I said, hey, remember me? And she's like, oh yeah. I said, I love you, I said. And she frowned, and she's like, huh. She turned around and took off. Man, 2 times. So then, following weekend is a powwow on another reservation. And here I saw her, so I ran over there and I said, "Hey, remember me?" She said, "Oh yeah." And and I said, "Don't you understand?" I said, "I love you." She looked at me again and she said, and she went the other way. Jeez. And finally, another week went by, and still at another reservation, I ran into her again at a powwow. And I was thinking to myself, geez, 3 times she turned me down. Damn. So I was thinking and thinking, oh, I bet she's from Sistine, I said. So I went over there, tapped her on the shoulder, and said, hey, remember me? Yeah, she said. So I said, are you from Sistine? And she said, yeah. Oh, no wonder. I dove you, she said. Not even. She walked away. He still didn't get her, yeah? Oh, she said. You have to know Lakota humor for that one, I guess. Et just doa le, she said. Oh, doa de, she said. Okay, anyway. That was bad story. Okay, sorry about that. But now do you understand the difference between Lakota and Dakota? That's the whole point. That's 2 dialects, and we have a third dialect called Nakota. And Nakota and Dakota are very similar. Using that same expression, lila washte. Dakota people say dida washte. As I said earlier, Nakota people say dina washte. Yeah, so Dakota people say dida, Nakota people say dina. See, they still use the D, but they throw an N in there. Isn't that interesting? That's the difference in the dialects. So this story takes place among a Dakota group. There's lots of Dakota groups, okay? Just like there's lots of Lakota groups, there's lots of Dakota groups too. They all speak this D dialect. Long time ago, there was a village, and it was this village was near, but not beside, a big river. So I'm guessing this is probably the Missouri River. It might even be the Mississippi River, okay? Because it's usually where the Missouri River joins the Mississippi River in the United States. This whole area is ancient Dakota country. Yeah, they have a big country too, just like we did. And but they're known as fishermen. Yeah, a lot of them are agricultural, but a lot of them are fishermen too. It depends where they're located. Yeah, some of them grew corn and wild rice in Minnesota, and corn in what's known as Iowa today. Yeah, these are 2 different Dakota groups, and some of them were fishermen as well. So um, anyway, this um, I'm guessing that this is the Mississippi River because the story says the camp was near this great river, but it was not beside the river. Indian tribes knew, up and down the Mississippi River, Indian tribes knew that they were not supposed to live beside this river because there's something that happens there all the time. and it doesn't make sense to live there. It's dangerous. And today they call this Tornado Alley. Yeah. But see, Indians already knew these things, and so they didn't live there. So when early, Europeans were coming westward, they noticed that, hey, look at this, look at all this land, nobody's here, let's just take it. Yeah. And they were and now here today, there's tornadoes that happen every year in this area, and floods. Yeah, there's always flash floods happening, and stuff like that, because people were not supposed to live there. That's the reason why. So this that's why I think this is the Mississippi River, because the story says the village was near the river but not beside. Yeah, because that would make sense. These two guys were in a canoe, and they were out in the river, and they were fishing. Yeah, they were out there and passing the time away, and just having a good time here. Just really suddenly, really fast, the sky changed. It was just black clouds, just thick black clouds, and it looked like they were coming low to the ground. So they said, "Oh, look at that. Let's 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 go closer to the shore." Yeah, because they didn't know what was going to happen, but they wanted to be safe, and so they paddled closer to the shore. And here they saw a funnel coming down from the clouds, yeah, like a tornado funnel. And they said, "Look at that!" And I said, "Oh, shoot that!" And they said, we better get close." And then they noticed the water. It was something that was causing waves to go in the opposite direction, and they knew something was under their canoe. So one guy looked in the water, and he saw these two bright yellow lights under the water, and they were coming towards the surface of the water. And he said, "Hey, there's some there's some there's two lights down there." And so they stopped paddling, and they looked down there, and these things were getting bigger. Yeah, these two lights, they were getting bigger, and the waves were getting higher. Yeah, the water was getting choppier, and as it got close, they saw that they were eyes. Yeah, they were giant eyes. So they paddled like crazy. Yeah, they really paddled like crazy, as fast as they could. They weren't even close to the shore, but they jumped out and started swimming, and then they ran. Yeah, they ran to the camp as fast as they could, because they saw Unkcegi. Yeah, and they knew they had to see. They made eye contact, so they had to get that energy out. Whenever you look at you have eye contact with the Unkcegi, you have to go into a sweat lodge ceremony, because they have to pull out that energy. It's the energy that if you don't get it out right away, it could really render you handicapped, and you lose confidence. It's like you go into almost like a depression, and it's just you're emotionally disturbed, you're mentally disturbed, and you're spiritually weak, and you become physically weak. All four parts of the self are affected. So they had to get back to that camp as soon as possible. So they went there, but as they were running, the sky darkened, and they heard screeching noises. They didn't want to look back, and they ran and ran and ran, and they got back to camp, and people noticed there was something wrong with these two. So they told their families what they saw. So they went to the medicine man, and they got a sweat lodge going right away, and they took him in, and the medicine man before he started the ceremony, he told the people to stay in their teepees and burn cedar. See, this is our tradition. Yeah? When the thunderstorm comes, we're supposed to burn cedar wood. Um, the reason is because the thunder being lives in the giant teepee in the west direction, and the teepee poles are made out of cedar trees. So when she's flying over and she smells cedar smoke, she likes that, yeah, and so she avoids that area, so she doesn't, send thunderbolts down. See, the reason why she's sending thunder is to cleanse the earth, so that things will grow, putting nitrogen back into the ground, so that things will grow, and things like that. So to avoid getting your house hit, this was our tradition, yeah, to burn cedar. And there's still a few people who still do this today, but sadly it's a tradition that is dying. That's too bad. So that's what this medicine man said. Yeah, he told everybody, go into your teepee, start burning your cedar, and you can sing songs and bang your drums because the thunder being likes that. That's cleansing. Yeah, so that helps people to not be afraid of the thunder. And so this is what they did. Then they took these two guys into a sweat lodge ceremony, and they got the energy out, yeah, of these two guys, and they were doing fine when the ceremony was over. Then they heard screeching noises all night, just screaming noises, and then a really loud explosion in the sky. It was really loud, and so people were coming out of their teepees, and the medicine man is saying, "Don't go over there. So we'll go there in the morning." That everybody was just excited and anxious, and so they waited. Yeah, they waited all night until the storm was gone, and morning time came. It was over. So they went to this area, and they got to the river, and it really stunk. Yeah, geez, the stink was bad. It was really bad. And then they picked up. They were looking, and then they saw that there's big chunks of meat all over. The medicine man said, "Don't touch it. Yeah, nobody touch the meat. Don't touch the meat." And they got some deer antlers. Yeah, and the different warrior societies were using deer antlers, and they were pushing all these pieces of meat into piles, and they noticed that this meat had scales on it, really big scales, yeah, just big and thick scales, like giant fish scales, kind of brown, like dirty silver, yeah, like rust, I guess would be the best way to describe it. And it really stunk bad. Yeah, geez, it was bad. And then they were able to locate its head. Yeah, they found its head. It was just huge. And then the medicine man instructed them to burn it. Yeah, they burned it, and they put sage in it. And then he did a ceremony for that land, because this creature, this Unkcegi, is some bad energy. Yeah, so they had to cleanse the ground too. Yeah, and so they had to be careful when you walk in that area. So they were able to dispose of the ashes in a ceremonial way. I'm not going to say how to do that because of the New Agers that listen to the show. But there's a way to do that, and so that was that. Yeah. So one day they were guessing, this thing was a giant. It was a really really big, some kind of some kind of snake-looking thing. Yeah, it was really long. And what did they see? How? What do you think? What did you think it looked like? Yeah. Well, I'll give you an idea from a different story, but let me end this one first, okay? So, um, this was the Unkcegi. Yeah, this was an Unkcegi. We always say Unkcegi monster in English. It had a battle with Wakian, one of the thunder beings, and it was losing. And what happened was that Wakia was trying to bring it in the air. Yeah, she was trying to make it go in the air because her lightning is more powerful when it comes right out of her mouth. Yeah, so she wants this thing as closest to her as possible, and she's trying to keep it away from the water because that's how they escape. Yeah, they try to fight her, but they never win. I mean, on land. Yeah, so when they see that they're losing, they head to the water. They go back to the water, and Wakia can't go in there. But then she's allies with the turtles, and the turtles can destroy these things. It's something she would rather do. Yeah, and so this is why she pulls them up into the air. And once she gets them in the air, then she strikes them a whole bunch of times, and that's what happened. So that's what was screaming. Yeah, the screaming was coming from the Unkcegi. It was in pain. And then the explosion was a big thunderbolt that hit its head, and that's what caused it to explode. So all over this thing was its body was all over the place. So that's what happened. Yeah, that's a really old story that stayed among that particular Dakota group, and I think which one are they called? Santee, I think. Isanti, I think is what they're called. I think that's a Dakota group. I know they have four main groups. Wachbekute, Sisitruan, Bediwakantruan, and Wachbetruan. It's the fourth one. And then each one of those groups breaks down into subgroups. Yeah, and this Isanti is one of the subgroups, I think. This happened to them, one of their groups. Yeah, so it's a really old story that got saved through oral tradition, and people keep passing it down, and it teaches you, the several customs that are reinforced in there, like the burning of cedar. Don't be live. When there's a giant river, a big river like the Mississippi, you're not supposed to live beside it because of these things that can happen. So those are some things that we learn from that, among other things, and that when you make eye contact with one of these things, that the energy travels. When you make eye contact with somebody, the energy travels back and forth. Yeah. So this is why we don't look people directly in the eyes that we don't know. Yeah, that's a sign of respect. That's the old tradition. Nobody keeps that today, and it's kind of hard because in the modern world, it's the opposite. Yeah, in the modern world, when you don't look somebody in the eyes, they get suspicious about you. So in the modern world, it's like a opposite tradition. Yeah, it's really crazy. When I moved to Berlin, I had to learn how to do that. Yeah, to make eye contact. And geez, I had a hard time. But I have a friend from India, Indian, yeah, and her name was Lily. And one day she said, I'm going to help you learn how to look people in the eyes. And I said, okay. So we sat there and looked each other in the eyes. It was really funny, yeah, because I kept looking away all the time. And then finally I was able to do it. Yeah, I think it took several hours of doing that, just sitting there looking at each other in the eyes. And she's really pretty. Yeah, she has really pretty eyes. So it was hard. Yeah, it was really hard. But it was worth it. Yeah. So thanks to her, I can do that now. Because here I have to. Yeah. Then I go back to the res and talk to people my age and, hey, how come you're looking at me like that anyway? And, I have to readjust. Eh? Oh, sorry about that. And I start looking down. Shit. Off guy. But that's how it is. Yeah, I have to make the switch. So, anyway, so those are some things that we learned from that. I'll explain to you another one, another old story, but this one is from the 1920s. Okay? I'll tell you another Unkcegi story from the 1920s. Remember what I said earlier about in the early days of the reservation, we couldn't leave. And we all lived in log cabins and away from each other. As the American government made this law that cut up the reservation into parcels of land, and they were separated. Every family got a parcel, and on the parcel in the middle was a log cabin, and so this separated the community group. Yeah, because most Native people have a extended family type of community, and this new American law broke that up. So we had to separate from each other, and we didn't see each other all the time. Yeah, the only time we really could see everybody was on Sunday to go to church. So that's the one reason why Indians looked forward to Sunday, so they could see all the relatives. But at the same time, we were not allowed to speak our language. We were not allowed to do our ceremonies. We were not allowed to eat the food that our bodies were used to. So we were hit physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And then our minds became weak. See, these are the four parts of the self. Yeah? So, but it felt good to see everybody in the same location. So that's the first reason why they went to church. Then as they were at church, remember, everybody is hurting physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. Our ceremonies were made illegal on April 10th, 1883. Yeah? And so the church was the next best thing. And so people, because of our weakened condition, we started to slowly believe what the Christian priests were saying. We were brainwashed, as I said earlier. So, this was a very sad time because now we're changing. We're not like our ancestors anymore. Now we're becoming Christian. Yeah, during that time period, as I said earlier. So, Indians could travel to see each other, but sometimes it was a long journey. Yeah. So this one family, they were visiting relatives. They just had a team and wagon, and it was like a half-day trip to go from one side of the reservation to the other, because that's what they had to do. They saw that, as they were going, a thunderstorm started to gather. Clouds were gathering, and the sky went black. When I say the sky went black, I mean the clouds. Yeah, it's so thick that it was black. And there was a mom and dad, and the little boy, their kid, was in the back seat, back of the wagon. And the kid was saying, "Look," he said, "Mom, Dad, look in the sky." So they stopped the horses and they looked up. And here they saw this looked like a snake. They said, "Don't look." They said, "Look away, don't look away, don't look up there." So the mom got in the back and made sure that boy didn't look up. And then they made the horses go faster, yeah? And the horses were kind of excited too, because they sensed something was wrong. And so usually lightning really excites horses, because horses and the thunder beings have a connection, yeah. horses, turtles, dogs have a connection with the thunder meat. Yeah, so they're all used in ceremonies that have to do with thunder, yeah, and lightning, which usually have to do with mental illness. Yeah, okay, but that's something else. Anyway, so the horses were, you know, kind of moved. They were running a little bit, and the woman started to sing songs, and with the boy, and then you heard screaming. Yeah, you heard really loud, high pitched screaming, in coming from the sky, and the boy started to cry. So the mom said, "Don't cry. So it's okay. It's a good, something really good is happening. So something is protecting us, and we're going to be okay." She said, "Don't worry. Everything is going to be okay." Yeah. She brought out a metal cup, and she put some what do you call it, cedar in there, and she started to burn it. And she said, "Everything is going to be okay." She's talking to her boy in calm voice. Yeah, so he was able to calm down, and they got to the by the time they got to their log cabin, they went inside, and soon after they went inside, they heard an explosion. Yeah. Then a screaming stopped. And about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes is all over. The clouds cleared, and sun came back out. See, this happened during the day. Yeah, sun came out, and everything was fine. And so what happened? Same thing. It was the same thing. So the description that in this story says it looked like a giant snake that was going up in the air. Yeah, it looked like a giant snake. And the reason why you're not supposed to look at it is because if it turns its head and you see its eyes, that's enough for you to get sick. Yeah? So that's why they say don't look up. Soon as you see something, try to avoid looking towards the top of it, because you might make eye contact, even if it's a mile away. You don't want to make eye contact. You don't even want to see the eyes. That's how unhealthy their energy is. Yeah. So from that one, we put that together with this old Lakota story, and then you can see that this was Unkcegi. This one, it looked like a giant snake. Yeah, that Wakina spotted it. It was probably out of the water. Yeah, because that's the only reason why she comes, is when they come out of the water. And so, sure enough, yeah, this was one of the Unkcegi. Yeah, she is rugged. I have another one. This one is on the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation on the northwest part of the reservation. This is where my mother's family is from. Yeah, these are the Itazipco Lakota people. These are the people who have the white buffalo calf pipe. This Unkcegi story is really rugged, and this one is probably the one that's the most Halloweeny. On the northwest side of the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation is a group of people called the Itazipco Lakota people. This is where my mother's side of the family is from, and they have there's an Unkcegi that lives near there. A lot of people don't realize that America's a big country, for one thing, and that there are large parts of land where people really don't know what's there. I mean, you can take satellite photos and all these kind of things, but that's just looking at the top. You don't really know what's under. Yeah. Now there's a certain location where there's an Unkcegi that lives there. It's still there. It comes out every now and then. It's about I don't know. It's about the most recent description I heard is that it is about 3 meters tall. Okay, so those of you who know metric, about 3 meters tall. For those of you in America, that's more close to 12 feet tall. Okay, it's a long creature, um, and it crawls. It's like a snake, yeah, and it really moves slow though. It's so big that it can only move slow. And the most recent story is probably about I mean with interaction. Yeah, there is a story that about 150 years ago that some guys they were what do you call it? They were hunting in the area, and they saw that you know they saw some movement in the trees, and they thought, gee, this must be huge because it's moving trees, and there's lots of big cottonwood trees in that area, and this thing was pushing them down. They could see them go down the trees, yeah. And it's like, oh, that must have got to be Unkcegi, they said. So they thought they would go take a look at it. So they got close, and so it was moving really slow. Yeah, it kind of it's a really big snake. Yeah, but it moves just slow, and so um, they made us. I think they stepped on something that made a crack. They probably stepped on a broken tree branch. Yeah, they stepped on it, so it hurt it. Yeah, so they were on the left side of this snake. So when this snake looked in their direction, one of them made eye contact. Looked directly in the eyes, two big yellow eyes. Yeah, and so the other guy, he didn't realize. He said, "Hey, let's go!" And so they took off, and they were, because it was going to come in their direction, because it started to turn in their direction. They said, "We better get out of here and go as fast as possible because you never know what could happen, even though it's moving slow." So the guy was running, and he noticed that, hey, wait a minute, he didn't hear anybody behind him, so he turned around. Here, that guy was still there. He said, "Hey, what's going on there?" And they said, "Get up, run!" They said he couldn't move. So he realized he must have looked him in the eye, so he couldn't move. So this is what it does. It kind of stops you. It kind of like hypnotizes you really fast. So he had to run back. Yeah, he had to run back, and he was shooting arrows into this thing, but it's just bouncing off because his skin is scaly. Yeah, and so he's running as fast as he could, and he finally was able to, push his friend out of the path, because this is how it gets its victims. It tries to make eye contact, so it hypnotizes you so you can't move. It sends medicine through the eyes, yeah, and this medicine paralyzes you, yeah. So it just you can't do anything. Then it slowly eats you, yeah. You can't do anything. It's chomping you away, yeah. Jeez. What a wicked way to end, yeah. Holy man. So he was able to push him out of the way and drag him. Yeah, he had to drag him, and his body was just stiff. And so he tried to go as fast as he could, and they made it. Yeah, they made it out of the area. It was in a valley. They made it out of there, and he brought him back to their camp, and they told him what happened. So they had to go on sweat lodge ceremony and get that stuff out. So all day long he was vomiting a yellow fluid. Yeah, some kind of a yellow fluid was coming out of him, and They had to do the ceremony for 4 days. Yeah. And finally they got it all out. There was so much fluid. Yeah. They finally got it out, so he had to rest, and people were watching him, and you know, and burning what do you call it, cedar, because this helps. This is part of the wakia medicine of cleansing unhealthy energy. Yeah. So normally in other situations you would use sage, but this was dealing with the Unkcegi, so you need something more powerful. Yeah, and that's wakia energy. That's in the cedar. So they were burning that. Um, and some people might say, well, why don't Indians just use cedar for everything? Well, that would be like eating too much candy bars, wearing too much makeup. It's too powerful. That's why I said you only use that medicine when it's serious things like this, and also with mental illness. Yeah. Other than that, you just use sage. That's why. Okay. So, he was pretty much okay, but he lost confidence. He had the energy was gone. They got it out of his body, but he lost confidence, and it took a long time. Yeah, the story says it took him 20 years, and by that time he was in his 40s, you could say. Yeah, and he was finally, regaining his confidence. That's how much it sucked out of him. Yeah, and he never married because he wasn't confident. He he just didn't want to. He just was scared of everything, and so that in most of his life he was very. They had to watch out for him. Yeah, the community. 'Cause remember, this is a long time ago. People thought in the community thinking perspective that he was taken care of. Yeah, they protected him because he was still sick, but just not. He just didn't have the unhealthy energy in there. Now he had a mental disorder. Yeah, so that's why it's really dangerous to be around these things. And yeah, that area does have Unkcegi there. Yeah, and you can find their bones there. Yeah, they're just back in the when was this in the 1980s where they found a T-Rex there made world news. Yeah, and it was found on tribal land. And the guy that owns the land, a non-native geological team was trying to. They bought it for him for $5,000, and it's like a joke. Yeah, and the FBI came in and said, "No, you can't do that. This is federal land." The FBI was correct. Yeah, the FBI was 100% correct. That was an illegal deal. That they can't do that. Yeah, whatever's in the ground belongs to the owner. So they returned the bones to the Lakota guy, and he sold it at Sotheby's Oxygen, the Sotheby's auction house in New York City. It sold for $8.5 million, I think. Some Chicago museum bought it. Sold an ancestor. He sold the Unkcegi. Gee, rugged guy. So that geological team was all brokenhearted, and they tried to they thought they could buy it for $1 million, so they really raised money for it. The auction went up way past $1 million. Yeah, so they really felt wrong. But I think that U.S. geological team was wrong. They shouldn't even been on the reservation. That's federal land. Yeah, you can't just walk on Indian land like that on the reservation. So that they're in Hill City, South Dakota. They shouldn't even been there. So they deserve to have lost. Yeah, that they were taken to court. Yeah, They even went to prison for that because they broke a law, yeah, federal law, which I think was just. Yeah, that they tried to take advantage of an Indian, is what they were doing. Yeah, these white guys, they were trying to take advantage of him, and the FBI stepped in. And one of the few times where the FBI did something good for Indians. Yeah, they protected this guy. So you can't do that. And they were right. That's federal law. Yeah, white people can't just go on an Indian reservation and start digging up the ground. That's against the law. So, anyways, this area has Unkcegi there. Yeah, even today there's still one there. They say it comes up about every 50 years or so. No kidding.